Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here with me today. Just to let you know what I do is I'm a consultant and I specialize in the areas of communication, accountability, and leadership. And the basis of my training is in ontology. Ontology is the study of being, and specifically as it applies to what I do, it's the study of who we're being as human beings. Ontological learning differs from traditional learning, which I refer to as informative learning, in that informative learning is like what you have in school. You go to first grade to go to second grade, you go to Algebra 1 to go to Algebra 2, you might get a bachelor's and a master's. It's building block learning. It builds upon itself, the knowledge that you already have. Ontological learning, on the other hand, leaves you with the ability to be that which you've learned. So what that means, if we use an example, a lot of people get MBAs, they go on to be managers or leaders. And what we found is that 55 to 65% of managers fail. Why they fail is because they don't have the beingness of being a manager. So really what ontological learning is it's about awareness. It's about your perceptual constraints. It's about what gets in your way. We actually operate 85% of the time on automatic, and we don't even know that we're doing it. So the intention of today's training is to give you more awareness in the area of communication, such that it leaves you with the ability to communicate more effectively and to get the results that you want in your life. The intention also is to have fun today. And I encourage you guys to participate, ask questions all through it, because this is for you. Here I am. So what we're going to review today is the communication and motivation part 1. We're going to take a little deeper dive into understanding frameworks, emotional responses, chronic complaints, how we listen, more info on being complete and how that impacts everything, moving the action forward, and the 3 pillars of effective communication. Before we start, what I want to ask you to do is, first of all, I just want to ask people, what do you think today's going to be about? Or what do you think is going to happen today? Anybody want to share on that? Effective communication, okay, good. A couple more people. Again, this isn't a heavy question, just throw out anything.
Trying to take somebody else's perspective into account.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Trying to take someone else's perspective into account.
Okay, trying to take someone else's perspective into account. Okay, I'm sorry?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, okay, good, good. So you just want to know that everybody came in with some idea or expectation of what's going to happen today. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to put that aside and to listen from a place that's going to bring value to you, value to your life, and awareness to you. Okay, so just notice that you have that going on. So the first thing, and we covered this in the last session, is what is communicating? Does anybody remember, before we bring up the slide, what we said communicating was? Okay. Good thing we're reviewing. Webster's definition of communicating is to get someone to understand your thoughts or feelings, or to understand someone else's thoughts or feelings. So the biggest problem, communication problem, is we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply. So think about that, okay? Really, when communication happens is if I'm speaking to Mark and he actually hears me, and when he responds, I actually hear him. I'm not thinking about a lot of other things going on in my head. The cost of not communicating. When surveyed, I think it's something like 85% of organizations said the biggest cost to them was in the area of ineffective communication during cross-functional projects, that people prefer to work in silos. So the cost to organizations is spiraling costs, late delivery, lowered performance, lowered morale, health cost, and to individuals, You get resentments, there's backstabbing, gossiping, there's passive-aggressive behavior, complaining, and increased stress. So you can see that it's really valuable to be able to communicate effectively. These are huge costs. Source of a communication breakdown. So what I want to do, and you have a little worksheet in front of you, is to give you a little scenario.
This is exercise 1.
Thank you. So imagine that you've just taken a new job on a new project with people that you don't know. And you get all spiffed up for your first day, and you're all excited, and you walk in and you say, "Good morning," in your cheeriest voice. And people look up at you, and then they look back down at their work. And as you go through your day, the same situation presents itself again and again. What happened? Take a moment to write down what just happened. So who'd like to share what happened? Right back in here.
Well, you feel unwelcome, you feel down, and you feel like you don't want to come back to work.
Okay, beautiful. So you felt unwelcome, you felt down, like you didn't want to come back to work. Bob?
I would feel like I didn't fit in, like I wasn't accepted or valued, and that I probably wouldn't want to go back.
Great. Mark, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I probably would have went home and said.
Wait 1 second for the mic, please.
Mark didn't listen to the rule.
I probably would have went home and said, it was okay.
Okay, Mark would have said it was okay.
Yeah, I not having processed really what happened, I'd give it another day to see if the same thing happens. So just an okay.
Okay, great. And somebody over here?
I would be worried about how effective I could be in my job if I'm going to have that much of a challenge connecting with people, and maybe that's just HR, but I would think, like, I need to have relationships with people, so how effective will I be in my role if this is the way relationships are going to go?
Okay, so you're
Didn't
in
happen here, by the way.
That's good news. You're in HR?
Yes.
Okay, so, and for you, how it would occur is you'd want, I'm sorry, say it again?
That I'd be saying I'd be worried how effective I could be in my
Okay,
job
your own
if I don't
effectiveness.
have, if I'm not building those relationships.
Okay, super. Okay, so as you can see from the people that shared, that everybody came up with pretty much a different answer. I think you guys might have had something similar where you didn't feel very good. What you want to know is that if we asked everybody in this room, we could come up with a different answer about what happened that day. And we could argue that one of them is more plausible than the other. But you just want to take notice that everybody had a different answer. So you go back on your second day now, and the first thing somebody says to you is, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. You passed the test." We do that to new people every day when they come in. And some people don't pass it, but you pass with flying colors. Then they say, "What can we do to make you more comfortable and to support you in your role here?" And so what happens then is you go home to your person, the part I left out before, and you say, they say to you, "Okay, how was your day today? What happened?" So write down now what happened. Okay, who wants to share what happened the second day? Mark.
Kelly, you don't have to go for a walk today.
Get my steps on.
I think I would have gone home and said, it sucked.
Okay.
Because they played with me the first day. So I would not have been happy with that at all.
Okay, beautiful. So for Mark, it would have sucked because he would have felt like he'd been played with. Who else?
I put glad I stuck with it and gave it another chance. However, still unsure how I would feel that the test made me feel unwelcomed.
I would have said confused.
Confused?
Because I feel like
they tell you one thing and then they go back and they do another. So how can you trust somebody after that?
Okay, good. Okay, so the conclusion you drew was, how can we trust somebody after that?
I would have been the same as Mark. I would have been really pissed. Your first impression is the most important one you have. And I would have just said, that's it, I'm done. You people need to reevaluate how you welcome people into your company. And I would have left.
Okay, beautiful. And you had your hand up?
Well, I would have been, I passed. I feel welcomed, and then I'm part of the team, so.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anybody else? Over here.
I can just, it's really short.
I think it would have made me really guarded after that. Now that test coming, or what quite to expect from leadership if they put you through the ringer on a first day like that.
Okay, really, really great. So again, you just want to notice that everybody has a different reaction. From a couple of you had the same one, all right? So again, we could argue maybe that's a more valid reaction. I'm pissed off. Somebody's happy because what that means to them is, oh yeah, I'm doing a great job. Somebody else is confused. So people are having different reactions. So what we're going to get to next, and if you guys remember this from the last class, the source of a communication breakdown. Fact plus interpretation equals story, okay? The key things to notice in what just happened, because if we were to say what happened, what actually happened was you walked into the office, people were at their desks, you said hello, people looked up and people looked down. Everything else that you guys said was an interpretation about what happened. That didn't really happen. That's what you added to what happened. And that creates a story. In a communication breakdown, and the key word here was what happened. The minute we say what happened, people then go into a story about it instead of just sticking to the facts. When there's a communication breakdown, there is an interpretation, and it doesn't meet your expectations. So just notice that what you all went into was a story, and just notice that everybody is dealing with a different story in their heads. Our stories do come from our past experiences and our conclusions, okay? And that is going to shade or filter how you then interact with people. And the fact is, all that happened was you said hello, people looked up, people looked down, okay? That was it. Questions on that? Is that clear? That is the source of a communication breakdown. Okay. So what I gave you last time was a forward action formula. All right, this is just a simple technique to keep you on task. And what it says is fact plus the intended outcome that you want will give you the action to take. So what we want to stick to is, what are the facts? What did happen? What is it that I'm intending out of this communication to happen? And that will give you the action you need to take. So this is all a little deeper review about what we did last time. Is that clear? Any questions on that?
Can we relate that to the example
To the example?
that we just did?
Yeah, the action to take, well, I guess we're going to get a little deeper into it, but you want to notice, I guess what I would say at this point is that whatever your conclusion was about the meaning or the interpretation that you added to what happened, it's going to impact what actions you take. It's going to impact your way of being. And I guess the key point that I just want to say on that is we relate to our interpretations as if they're reality, okay? And in fact, they're reality illusions. The only thing that's real are the facts about what happened. And that's what really gets in the way of everything. I will be getting into some stuff more deeply, and if it's not answered, bring up your specific, or if you want to add anything.
So if we look at the if we look at the example that we just had about going to work the first day, Francesca outlined the facts, right? When someone said what happened, you would say what Francesca said for facts. Instead, we added our interpretation, right? How it made us feel in a lot of the examples that you used. But in this case, if you look at the fact, I walked in, I said hello, people looked up, they looked down, and instead of adding your interpretation, you added your intended outcome. So why are you going to work there, right? Whether it's the job of your dreams, or you need it to support your family, or this is an opportunity for you to really expand your skill set, whatever it is, and you focused on that intended outcome, then the action to take would be to return the next day, right? And to be committed to being successful in your new role. So that's what I meant by just relaying it to the example.
Thank you. So what we have here is another little tip that I've come up with as far as how we speak. Our languaging and our words are actually what create our reality and our experiences. So what I say is use action-based language versus descriptive language, okay? And I will give you an example of what that looks like. If we go to a ball game and we are listening to the people who are in the stands watching the game, you want to notice that the kind of language and the kind of conversations that they're having are what I call descriptive language. There's a lot of justifications, evaluating, assessing, making the team wrong, justifying why they are where they're at, just opinions, all of that kind of stuff. The conversations that these people are having do nothing to impact the game. There's nothing at risk. It's not going to change anything. Now, if you go on the field, what you're going to see are the ball players, and what they're saying, conversation might be, pass me the ball and I'll score the next touchdown, all right? The team's entire focus is on winning the game, i.e. the intended outcome, all right? The language that they're using is actually creating the game and what's going to happen. That's action-based language. So you want to just start to notice what kind of conversations are you having? Are you having conversations that are in the stands that do nothing to move the action forward, or are you having conversations to win? So I think it's an easy tip. Again, as I said, this is all based in awareness and consciousness, and what you're looking to do is to be aware of what you're saying. Because as I said, we're 85% of the time we're on automatic. We don't even know what we're saying. We're just speaking, and it's human nature to complain. And Kelly, did you hear what happened? Blah, 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 okay? Those are all in the stands conversations. Questions on that? Okay, so what we're going to go through now are a few things that get in our way. And the first thing is emotional responses. So here's the thing about emotional responses. Emotional responses are a tip-off. The minute you have a strong emotional response to something, there is a very, very, very strong possibility that what you're responding to is your story, conclusion, or interpretation, not the circumstance or the event itself. Okay? So the minute you see yourself reacting to something, okay, I think you said you were pissed off, and Mark said he was angry, okay? You're not responding anymore to what happened. Okay, that's a tip-off for you. Okay, so the suggestion would be take a couple of steps back and then go back to what are the actual facts here. Okay, because that's an automatic response. You're connecting it in your mind to something that happened in the past, making it mean something about what something happened, and therefore it means this. They're jerks. They're testing me, that's not right, whatever you're coming up with, and that's not reality. It's going to take you off your game. So some of the emotional responses I put are annoyed, frustrated, angry, upset, defensive, even happy. Okay? Questions on that? I'm sure a lot of you have seen, when your emotions get into something, it's really hard to even stay focused or concentrate on what's going on, because what our mind tends to do is to replay what's happening. When we're responding to emotional responses, it goes fact, story, then the emotion comes in, and that actually gives us our action, okay? Sometimes it can even actually make us not feel good. We lose energy, we might get sick. It could be a whole array of things. Questions on that? Here's what's so about emotional responses. Stories and interpretations create emotional responses. Others are not responsible for your emotions. You are. Why are you responsible? Well, we did that exercise earlier, and what we saw was that people have different responses to different things. You're angry, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. No, behind you. Patrice. And Patrice was actually, she felt successful when she thought she passed the test, okay? So that's very clear that you are responsible for your own emotions, and they're based on the stories that you're telling yourself. Stories will always create conclusions, judgments, and fears, all resulting in emotional responses. So really, 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 really key to stick to the facts. Frameworks. Okay, so we have frameworks about ourselves and others. And if you remember from the last class, and Patrice, I do remember this about you, I gave the example about kite. And what I had given you was 14 sentences that appeared to be not connected. Does everybody remember that? Okay, and when I gave you a framework to hold them in, all of a sudden it made sense, okay? Kite was the framework. So we do need frameworks in our lives in order to function, because otherwise it's all gonna seem very disconnected. The one key I would say about a framework is make sure it's one that empowers and supports you, if you're going to have one, and consistent with what you're up to. So here's what frameworks are. They define the limits of how we perceive something. They're decisive. And your actions are always going to correlate to what your framework is. So I had also given you an example of fleas in a jar. And when you put the fleas in a jar, they jump as high as, if you put a lid on it, as high as the lid. When you take the lid off, they're going to jump as high as the now imaginary lid, because that's the framework they're operating out of. They're in belief that there is a lid. This is how frameworks limit us. And this is how they are decisive in terms of your actions are going to correlate to your framework. You know, I was working on this the other day, and I got very present to a framework that I had that limits me. I have this framework that technology is beyond me. I go into an absolute panic around technology. I was so grateful that Kelly fancied up my PowerPoint. I usually have my son do that, and he was in Europe, so this was like a blessing. But my immediate thing around technology is it's difficult, and I'm going to struggle with it. And that's a framework I operate out of. So, of course, on Sunday, I opened up my computer. It's a laptop, and the back part was messed up, like the screw. It wasn't shutting completely. And I had called my son. I said, Trevor, oh no, you know, what a time to have this happen. And he said to me something about, you know, we should do the backup on the hard drive. And I said, yeah, okay, whatever. So of course now I have this anxiety building up because this is technology and this is my framework. So what happens then is on Monday, I'm working and all of a sudden something comes across the screen that says battery low. Okay, this is real frightening for me. So I check all the plugs and I don't see anything. And then in a few minutes, the computer dies. So now I'm in absolute panic because my framework is, I don't understand technology, what am I gonna do? And I call my son, and he was at work, and he didn't call me back immediately. And okay, as soon as I took a breath and calmed down, I looked down on the floor and there was one little thing I didn't see as far as being plugged in. So I thought, okay, here you go. You can see the framework in action, all right? So then what happens is my son calls me up, and he says to me, I told him it's okay, it's all working, and he said, well, let's download it on the hard drive, and I'll walk you through it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this because how I listen to this is through my framework, and it's difficult. Well, I can't even begin, thank God my son has patience. I can't even begin to tell you simple instructions. He said, my computer, go to my computer. Well, my mind, when you're in a framework, okay, all of a sudden my mind goes blank. It's almost like I'm unconscious. My computer, where's my computer? So I finally get into my computer, wasn't sure because it said computer and not my computer. I'm so nervous about messing up. And then he told me what to go in, and then he said, you got to create a new folder, and he said, press this button and that button, and it wouldn't work. And then the next thing I knew, I had 48 folders, and he said, well, just, he said, just, what do you call it, highlight them all and delete them. And I couldn't do that even, and I was getting more frustrated. All of this because of my framework. None of this was difficult. And mind you, I finally got down to 3 folders. It wasn't working the way he was telling me to do it. I was getting more frustrated. Finally, I don't know, by the end of it, I literally saw how simple it was and felt like a real idiot because it took me literally 7 minutes after, all was said and done. But I tell you this because that's my framework around anything with technology. I go into a panic. So you just want to notice when you have a framework about something, your actions correlate. I get anxious, and therefore what we actually look for is something that's going to thwart us, okay? We're actually not seeing what's there. We're not seeing it clearly. We're not thinking clearly. We're in a complete panic, and it affects what we're doing. So that's what frameworks are. The next thing that I want to talk about is what I call the unsaid. And all organizations or corporations have unsaid. I mean, it would be unrealistic to think that people don't talk to each other or gossip about things versus just go to somebody. If I have an issue with Mark, I'm going to go to Kelly and say da-da-da-da-da-da about Mark. Okay, so this is what happens in companies. But this is really totally ineffective because Kelly can't do anything about whatever my issue is with Mark. And what it actually does is it creates a subculture within a culture. And the more people that hear it and believe it, then the more people relate to it as that. Unsaid gets created through assumptions, through expectations, broken agreements, disappointments, resentments, regrets, interpretations, significance, and issues that we think occur as dangerous. It impacts our performance. All of your actions are going to be consistent with how the unsaid occurs for you. Your actions will be defensive. It's going to diminish your relationship. The unsaid lives in communication, and please know, when you have unsaid, we communicate also through movement, through body language. We communicate in a lot of different ways. Years ago, I don't know if anybody read the book, The Clan of the Cave Bear? Did anybody read that book? Well, there was one part, this woman had studied the Neanderthals, and it was about a Cro-Magnon child living with the Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals had very short vocal cords, so they could only make a few guttural sounds, and there wasn't a lot of communication going on. And for them, they were very, very hypersensitive to body and motion and that kind of communication, so how somebody was being. Well, we all have that in us, but we tend to overlook it. So when there is something unsaid, say if I'm talking to Mark, and I keep using Mark because I know his name, when I'm talking to Mark, if I have something that's unsaid, there will be something that he will pick up. We just don't usually register and react on that. And what I'd like people to just take a minute or two to do, and this is just for your own use, but write down people that you have unsaid with, things that are not completely communicated, or where you have feelings about things, or just thoughts about things. Because I promise you, if you clean up your unsaid, your relationships will work, your effectiveness will be better, and your overall well-being, joy will be better. So just take a minute or two to see if anybody comes up for you, or who comes up for you at work, at home, wherever. Unsaid also operates in a framework that you're holding. The causes of the unsaid: looking good, being right, fear. I encourage anybody to have the conversations with those people that they wrote down. So the next thing that gets in the way is what I call the 3 R's: resentment, resistance, and revenge. When you have unsaid, this is what happens. The first thing is resentment. When we have resentment, we get into resentment when we experience an emotional response, okay, here's the emotional response, to what we think was said or done, okay? Doesn't mean it necessarily was what was said or done. Resistance is when we put up a wall or cutting off communication. We're programmed to resist and exhausted because we live in constant resistance. And revenge, which is the final of the 3 R's, these happen, first this, then this, is an attempt to get even. I'm going to share an example to show you how it works, and then I'm going to ask if anybody has one that they'd like to share. So years ago, I've had a very close friend since I was 14 years old. We were best friends, we grew up together, lived together when we were young, went through life's experiences together, and as we got older, there came a time where I was feeling she was constantly judging me and making me wrong for what was going on in my life. And at first I said something to her, but it continued, so I started to feel some resentment. I didn't like this because she wasn't hearing me. So then what happened was resistance. When I would talk to her, it was almost like thick enough that you could cut it. There was something between us. I wasn't being with her fully anymore. It was like I was putting on the face, but I wasn't really there. My resistance was there. And then you want to know that all of this lives inside of a framework, okay? Because when you have resentment, all right, you're now looking at it from that this person is looking to do things that I will resent, okay? So whatever I was hearing her say, I was hearing it more from the resentment. So finally what I did was I was so angry that I cut her out of my life for about 2 or 3 years. I wouldn't talk to her. That was my way of getting back at her. She even wrote me a letter saying how much she missed me, and I don't even know what else. I was still so angry and so in resentment that I wrote her a letter and I ripped her apart, saying, I can't believe you did A, B, C, D. I have nothing to say to you. I was being totally right, okay? And the one thing you want to know about when you have resentment or any of this going on, and it's a good thing I said this to Mark earlier because I would have messed it up, but it's like drinking poison and hoping it's going to kill the other person. Because I was the one that was feeling the bitterness, the anger, the upset. That was churning inside of me. Well, a few years go by, and all of a sudden, I woke up. I was like, why are you being this way? I mean, what was it that she did that was so bad? And I contacted her, and we got together, and I was just so grateful to see her because I knew that she really loved me. And yes, has she said a couple of things that were upsetting to me? Sure, but that didn't mean she didn't love me and that she hasn't been a friend all my life. So you just want to know that there's a huge cost and that this is a racket that we run in our lives, and this is, it builds if we don't complete the unsaid. Does anybody have an example they want to share? Mark?
Yeah, so this is kind of a big one. I'm surprised I'm going to say it, but I will because it's what happened to me, and I'm sure other people have had something similar happen. But yeah, I was about 18 years old, feeling good about where I was in my life. My parents socially connected very well, and all of a sudden, it all came crashing down, and found out that my father was having a relationship with another woman, and he lied to me about it. My brother and I confronted him on it several times, and he, for whatever reason, well, I understand now, but just didn't come clean and tell us what was going on.
I mean, prior to it happening, you finding out you had confronted him a couple
Yeah, we knew something was going on, and my brother and I dug deeper to find out that there was definitely something going on. We confronted him. He denied, and we actually caught him with this person, and he continued to deny, and we told my mother about it, and she was crushed. And
Can I just ask you a question? What did you make that mean, or what conclusion did you draw from that?
from what had happened,
When you thought your father was cheating, and then
he was lying to me.
okay. And any other conclusions or meanings that you drew?
Say it again.
Any other meaning or conclusion that you drew out of that? Found out about you, about your life, or about him, or
Yeah, I felt completely mistrusted by him and completely lost all trust in him. I was angry. I was disappointed. I felt like my life had fallen apart, even though it didn't happen. I mean, it was happening to me, but not sure what you're asking.
did it mean anything to you, or was there a conclusion about moving forward in your life, about your relationship with your father, about who you were, anything like that?
Yeah, so that anger turned into, I was angry for a while, and that turned into resistance because I completely cut him off.
Okay, I guess what I was, and again, I'm making this up, I don't know if this is true for you or not, but was there a conclusion that, it invalidated my life, or I can't trust what people say, or I'm not, my father didn't love me, or I'm not, like, were any of those kind of conclusions going on for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself at the time immature, and 18-year-old going into college. So yeah, I felt as though my father didn't love any of us. Not only my mother, but he didn't love my brother, or he didn't love me, because if he did, he would have been honest with us. So
the reason I'm pointing this out is because, again, remember we talked about emotional responses, and emotional responses are directly related to a conclusion or a meaning that we're adding. So the facts are your father cheated, and I'm not in any way saying that you shouldn't have been upset. I mean, I totally get it. But you just want to notice that our conclusions are really what keep us stuck.
correct. And that did keep me stuck. He didn't cheat on me, he cheated on my mother, but I took that as he cheated on me as well. So there was a period of time where they tried to make things work, but that other relationship continued, and I saw my mother continually going downhill emotionally, physically, and became suicidal at times, and I had to protect her. I was living at home at the time, going to college locally, and I would spend my nights studying on I used to live in the basement. I used to study on the steps, because when he came home, she would question where he was. He would lie, and then at times it would get physical, and there was yelling, and I had to step in, and it was an ugly time in my life.
Yes.
Very ugly time. So I think resistance was that I cut him off.
Put a wall between.
Yep, my parents split up, and I was home protecting my mom, and he went off and did his own thing, and I told him, I said, you know something? You lied to me. I can't trust you. We're done. And that lasted for about 7 years. Now, my brother did the same thing. Didn't last as long with him. But then I got married. He didn't come to my wedding. We didn't invite him to my wedding. The priest at the time had said that's probably not a good idea, because the focus wouldn't be on you and your wife. It would have been on your mother and father. So I called him and I told him that I'm getting married and that I wasn't going to invite him, and he understood. But it wasn't until my first child was born. And I realized at that time, literally at that time, I would never want my child to ever do something like that to me, for whatever bad things I've ever done in my life. Because I'm not infallible, I know that, I realize that. And at that point in time, I said, what am I doing? this is my father, you know, and kind of similar to what you just said, that reality check. And I reached out to him, I called him, and we had 2 or 3 meetings. He came over to where Lori and I were living, and we talked it through. I told him why I was angry, what had happened. He completely understood, and apologized, and I apologized. And then our relationship started to get better over time, and he was involved in our life. And of course, my mother had her own issues and wasn't exactly happy, but I said, look, at the end of the day, this is my father. This is what I need to do. I still support you. And but the story actually ends pretty well because we came together and he was part of our life. And the goodness was that he came together with my mother. Not that they remarried, but my mother was a terrific Armenian cook, and my father was Armenian and loved all her cooking and missed it. So they would meet on a monthly basis. He'd come to her apartment, and she'd cook for him, and they would have their time together too. So in the end, one of the things my father said before he passed away was that in hindsight, he probably never would have done what he did. But hey, I realized I was immature at the time and didn't realize it takes 2 to tango, and that it wasn't necessarily entirely my father's fault. And you know, immaturity probably created me to resent and resist, but at the end of the day, I think it all worked out well. I can't believe I just shared that story.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you. I just love, too, just to point out that, you know, when he shifted his perspective, i.e. framework on it, there was more possibilities about having a relationship with his father. And the bottom line is he loved his father. So take a moment again to look at if any of this is going on anywhere. And you know, Mark's story was really a deep story. I mean, we have this at all different levels, okay? We have it with people that we're working with. I don't really like that person. Or we have it in our relationships. I don't like what he said. So just take a look to see if you have this anywhere in your life, and just write down where you're carrying it. Again, all of this is awareness, okay?
So as you're writing, I'm just going to share another story. I think what I love, and if anyone here didn't attend the first communication and motivation session, as a reminder, Francesca worked with the partner manager groups 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
Well, not quite that one, but somewhere in that vicinity.
Was underestimate time, but I think it was 10 years ago. And so I was exposed to Francesca for 7 to 8 months probably of weekly trainings. And
Saturated.
one of the things I absolutely loved was that what you learn here not only serves you professionally, but also personally. And I think Mark is a testament to that. And I recently had an example more on a professional note that I'll just kind of explain to try to tie everything that we've learned so far up together for you so you can understand this has incredible impact. So right now, if you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure about all this stuff, it's a little abstract, I'm not getting it, I'm telling you, it is life-changing. So I was talking to a girlfriend, she works at CVS, and she was talking about how her manager doesn't really include her in meetings and tends to exclude her from things, has meeting with some of the managers, but not all the managers, and doesn't invite them to external events or strategy meetings or different things. And so she's starting to feel it, she's feeling like she's not being included. We know what the fact is. Her interpretation is she's not valued. Person probably doesn't like me. I'm not appreciated, all this kind of stuff. And so she's not complete because she's not talking to her manager about how these things are occurring for her. So there's this unsaid between her and her manager, right? And now everything that the manager does, she's holding the manager in the framework of he doesn't value me, he doesn't appreciate me. And so every single thing that the manager does, she's making herself right. She's saying, see, he doesn't like me. He could do anything, and this person doesn't like me, doesn't value me. She's telling me all this on the phone, and I'm thinking, I'm just letting her talk, I'm listening, and I'm thinking of all the things that Francesca has taught us through the years. And so she's building resentments, she's resisting communication. Now, one of the things is I say good morning to him, he doesn't say good morning back to me. So now she doesn't say good morning to him, so we could kind of say that's revenge a little bit. And I said, you need to talk to your manager about what's happening, how it's occurring for you. You need to become what we call become complete, because if you don't, there's unsaid, and it leads to the 3 R's and all this. And she did. And the manager said, I'm having these meetings and they don't really involve you, and I know how incredibly busy you are, but we're talking about something that doesn't apply to your role at CVS, and so I'm just trying to guard your time. It has nothing to do with you. You're a valued part of the team. And so she made this huge story up and was, and this is what we do on a day-to-day basis, you guys. I mean, you got to think, be realistic, look at yourselves in the mirror. We do it. There's a fact, we interpret it a certain way. All of a sudden, there's a story. We start talking about anyone who'll listen to our story because we're going to be right and that person's going to be wrong, rather than being aware of the frameworks you hold people in, knowing when you're in story, not fact. Don't allow yourself to even get to that place. It's not healthy. You carry it around. It's a burden. This is what you go home, and the people that you don't see all day, this is what you're talking to them about at night. It's not worth it. So we're about halfway through the session. Francesca still has a lot of great material to go. Think about this stuff, because if you can really absorb it and just even it heightens your awareness to this stuff, it will make you all better people professionally and personally. I promise you that. So that, Mark, I appreciate with the personal story, because absolutely it helps you in that regard. But there's just kind of a professional story that I think we can all relate to in some ways, of something that I just kind of helped my friend kind of go through. And it was a great experience for her. So I just wanted to share that.
Really, really great story. Your frameworks are always going to validate themselves. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name in the pink.
I'm just standing as my back hurts.
Oh, I know your name. Audria. I was noticing when you said, and it took my attention for a second, when I asked you about the what happened, and you said, well, I'm in HR. You just want to notice immediately that's where my attention went, was that's the framework you look through. So that's going to impact then, or it's going to be decisive in terms of how you then experience something or see something. So it's just, as I said, ontological learning is to put a conscious awareness on these things, because when we're unconscious, all right, they're going to filter or shade what we're seeing, and we're not going to be seeing what's really there. It's not that it's bad that you're looking from that perspective, and sometimes it serves you if it's an HR issue, as long as you have the awareness on it, okay? But if we don't have the awareness on this, these are perceptual constraints, then we're at effect of them. They run us, we don't run them, and we're react instead of proact. So thank you for that example, because I think it did tie it into business, and what I'm picking up potentially is that how does this apply to what we're doing? So thank you very, very much for that. Are there any questions on this? So these are just a few of the things, okay, to give you more awareness, to start noticing in your day-to-day activity if they're going on. And the beautiful thing I just want to say about that, you might have a thought, oh gosh, this is going to be so much work to try to be aware of this and to be aware of that. But by just having this in your awareness, things will start to pop up. Oh, I'm being this. Oh, I'm being that. So one other thing that we talked about in the last session was completion. And completion, in terms of both of the examples that Mark and Kelly shared. When Mark actually communicated with his father, he was complete. He said what he had to say. And then he was able to reestablish a new relationship based on what was. Kelly's friend found out when she was complete and communicated, instead of staying in the unsaid, that it was all a lie, and she could then go back to focusing on what was there. So all that is unsaid is incomplete. It is going to impact how you relate and how you listen, and nothing will change otherwise. It'll be like Groundhog Day. Do you remember that movie, or am I dating myself? Groundhog Day was the one where, I think it was Bill Murray, and every day he woke up to the same scenario, and he got to live it a different way, but it was still the same thing, and he'd go to bed and be the same thing. So what you want to know is if you don't complete things in your relationships, you're going to have the same relationship with that person again and again, because where your framework is if I'm thinking, you did something that I resent, I'm just going to be looking for things to resent. So that's where we look from. It'll be validated every time, and it will be Groundhog Day. What complete means also, what we said last time, was that there is nothing between you and the person you're speaking to that's left. So if I'm speaking to Audria and I feel complete, but I'm looking over there and I'm seeing her being a little confused, or I'm just picking up something like the Neanderthals, okay? Then I say, are you complete? Is there anything else? Because I'm getting something from you. So just start to notice when you're having these little intuitive flashes that something is going on with somebody else, because most of the time we tend to disregard them. And you really want to be in relationship, it's always 100% zero. We operate like it should be 50-50. It ain't, okay? Always take 100% responsibility. Your life will transform out of it. Questions on that? Okay, this is one of my favorites, okay? And it's chronic complaint. All right, and what a chronic complaint is it's something that we complain about chronically, all right? It's an issue. What issues or people or situations at work or life appear to be repeatedly difficult, problematic, or frustrate your intentions? And this occurs for you as the truth. I mean, I've had conversations with this person. They're still always doing that. They just don't listen. Blah, 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 blah. I want you to take a minute now to look at what is a chronic complaint for you. We all have them. Okay, who is a brave soul? Who would like to work with me? Great. Would you? Yes, absolutely, bring your example. And your name is? Ruth. Ruth. Thank you so much, Ruth. Okay, so what is your chronic complaint?
Too much work, not enough time. Facts, background for you, not knowing you.
Okay, and the cost to you, your firm?
To me is, or it's a complaint of mine as a manager in the franchise department. We have monthly deadlines, not only tax deadlines, so it's an every month complaint that not only comes from myself, but I hear from others.
Okay, so you got agreement on this one?
Yes. The cost is working at home at nights and or weekends.
Okay, so working at home?
Cost to me, losing my family time. Or others doing the same.
Okay, so want to say relationships?
Yep.
Okay.
That was mine.
Okay, any other?
No, because then I shifted it once I got down to the bottom.
Okay, so the cost to you, I'm sorry?
Stress. Yeah, perfect. Never stressed.
Okay, stress, that would be well-being or health. Okay, relationships, how about happiness? Does it affect that? Are you happy when you're having this complaint?
No.
Okay, so joy or happiness.
How about questioning your self-worth on make yourself, you feel like you're not accomplishing?
Okay, self-esteem. How about self-expression? Are you self-expressed when you're having this?
In the manic ways, either extremely upset or extremely depressed.
Okay, so these are the costs. All right, so what we want to know about chronic complaints, okay, now they do occur is the truth, all right? And I'm going to bring a couple of things into this. These are big costs, okay? Are they not? They're costing you relationships, your well-being, your joy, your happiness, your self-esteem. I would call all of this your aliveness, okay? Payoffs. In order to continue to have this complaint, there has to be a big payoff for you to put up with this cost.
To make it...
Payoff's not a good thing. What's the payoff you get out of having the chronic complaint?
To get to that point of making it better, like my own.
Well, that you would put up with something like this that's costing you all this.
Well, obviously, there's no payoff from that, but the payoff would be the time invested to get it to a place of being better. Does that make sense?
Okay, well, let me just give you a couple of things. Payoffs usually is you get to be right about something or make somebody else wrong. You get to justify something. You get to dominate or avoid dominance. Or win, avoid losing. And all of this falls under responsibility. Do any of those ring a bell for you?
All of them, but it's not the place you want to be. You don't want to be right. You don't want to dominate. You don't want to.
Well, I would push back on that simply because you're willing to put up with, and I'm not saying you, everybody has this, okay? Please don't take this as a personal thing, but this is a place to look. The cost of running our complaints on a non-stop basis is huge. So we have to be getting something out of it, okay? And what you want to look at, if I was to ask you, what have you done as far as communicating or as far as working too much, what would you tell me?
What have I done?
Yeah, what actions have you taken so that
Well, I kind of put that under cost to the firm because talking about it would mean financial to hire more people for a solution.
Okay,
So I like
so
to come with a solution, and this is one where I'm kind of roadblocked with. I think maybe a bunch of us are that the solutions aren't obtainable right then. They are ones that, like hiring, would be a financial burden to the, not a burden, but more cost to the firm to hire more employees, which in turn leads to more time taken to train those new employees.
So, okay, so what you're saying is you're not talking to people about hiring more people because it's going to take more money?
No, we are, but
You are.
it's one of the choices of a solution.
Okay, so you actually have communicated about this? Correct. Okay, and there is a solution being?
Right, they're just not immediate solutions. They're ones that you got to stick with for a long-term solution.
Okay, so are you still complaining in the interim?
Yeah, I think yes.
Okay, because just a couple of things on
Because
this.
it's not helping immediate.
Okay, so the immediate help isn't here, and so you're going to continue to complain, and it's going to cost you all of this, okay? So you get to be right that there's too much work, and you get to make them wrong, okay? Does it justify you not completing all the work or anything? And I'm asking, I don't know the answer.
Justify not complete. Yeah, absolutely. That was another one that I had to cost to the firm where client needs need to be moved around. You end up putting someone at the bottom of the list.
Okay, so it justifies you're not completing all the work. So a couple of things around it. First off, what you need to know as far as, and I'm going to bring a little language into this too much work. See, there is only as much work as there is, and you do only as much as you do, okay? Adding too much, okay, is a descriptive, all right? Remember we talked about descriptive before? And you want to look at the minute you say too much, what it leaves you with. What do you start feeling? Okay, this is, when I said a persistent way of being, all of a sudden you're going to be upset, you might be angry, you're stressed, okay? Just by adding the words too much. Too much is an interpretation, okay? You have work, you take it home, you do as much as you do. There is only as much as there is. There is no too much. I don't know when you were hired, what the agreement was, what you were told. And there may be a breakdown in communication. I mean, I acknowledge you for communicating it, but you want to look at when we continually, chronically complain about something, we are getting a payoff in doing so. And if we break something down, we can look at too much, all right? I would just suggest taking too much right out of the equation, okay? Because one of the things I think I put on the next slide, There's a woman called Byron Katie, and what she says is if you argue with reality, you're going to lose 100% of the time. I don't know what your agreements were when you took the job on, okay? I do this course on accountability. You want to look at who's choosing to be here, okay? If you're choosing to be here, does it serve you to chronically complain, to take a vocal action, to make a request, to say, this is what I'm finding, sticking to the facts, that when I have this much work, I go home and I stop and this doesn't get complete, okay? That's a fact, okay? What can we do for a solution, okay? If they choose not to have a solution, then that's one thing, then you have a choice whether you want to stay here or not, okay? If they choose to have a solution and it takes more time, then your choice is, do I want to stay in my complaint or not? If you stay in your complaint, I promise you there is a payoff, because complaining about something when nothing is, being productively done to shift it is a waste of time. And all of this does occur in language. Too much is descriptive. Who's to say what's too much? Do you think when a fish swims up north, it says, oh, the current is too heavy? They just swim. They don't think in language. We think in language, and that's what the source of the upset and the breakdown is. Persistent complaints, we get a payoff out of doing them, okay? Ultimately, it justifies that the work doesn't get done, okay? I don't know from the other side, people come into things with a lot of different things going on, but what you want to say to yourself, is this true? Is it really true? What could be a turnaround statement? Maybe I give myself too much work, okay? Play with it a little bit.
I think that's what Kelly was saying too, that there is just too much work for not just myself, but we're.
Well, what is too much though?
Because we have a monthly deadline, like I explained.
Okay, so does it get done by the deadline?
It does, with all
Okay.
those things happening.
So somebody could argue, no, it's not too much.
Because all these things are happening, and that's not where we want to be.
Okay,
we don't
so-
want working at home. We
Okay,
don't
you
want
don't
people
want to work
unhappy and
at
stressed out.
home as much. So
Correct.
the action that it take, again, the intended outcome, if you want less work to take home, is to have the conversation, okay? And then operate your choices from there. But you want to stay present to what is going to make a difference in terms of this instead of the complaint. The example that I wanted to just give you on this is, there was a woman who was a salesperson, and she said, if clients weren't so slow to make decisions, I'd have more sales, okay? Well, that's about as ridiculous as saying that if the football field was 90 yards instead of 100, I would have made more touchdowns, okay? So what you want to do is look at, see, because what is. And like it or not, the field is 100 yards long. Like it or not, you have the work that you have. Like it or not, clients are slow to make decisions. But given that, what are you going to do to win? Okay? Being in a chronic complaint is a lose-lose. There's a payoff there, okay? We're getting something out of it, okay? So you just want to start noticing and catch yourself when you're complaining about the same thing. Notice your way of being. Are you all, or are you all upset or frustrated, annoyed? It affects everything around you. It perpetuates, and again, it's from a framework. There's too much work here, okay? You may not even have as much work as you think you do, and I'm making that up. You might, I don't know, but it may be taking you longer because you're complaining so much about it, and I don't know the answer to that. You want to look at, okay, win-win, all right? What is going to win?
You know that saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil or grease?
A woman after my own heart. I never get them right either.
Like if you're driving your car, it's like, you're going to get it, you want to get it fixed.
Yes.
But if it doesn't say anything, it doesn't make noise. You never, oh, it's fine. You're not going to get any maintenance. So wouldn't maybe not complaining, but maybe it's bringing light to an issue that.
Yes, absolutely have the conversation. But when you have a conversation, you want to have it with facts, okay? Not coming from a position of I'm right, you're wrong. Because whenever we're doing that, all we're going to do is look for more evidence, all right? So here's you know, what I'm finding, okay, and I think you said this, is that I come home and I have 5 hours worth of work every single night. That doesn't work for me. What can we do? Okay, so you create a partnership. You enroll people in what you want. What's your intended outcome? Does it work to say to Patrice, oh, can you believe how much work we have? This place sucks, blah, 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 blah. And everybody, now we have everybody enrolled in how much work there is and how nothing ever happens here. That completely sabotages everything. What are you up to? What kind of game are you playing? What are the conversations that you're having? Are they in the stands or on the court? You know, again, look at too much work, okay? Don't even add too much. This is how much work I have. I'm going home 5 hours. Is it me? Is it, you know, can we do something about this? And ultimately, we all have choices. We have to be accountable for our choices. I know that everybody here knows, excuse me, that during tax season, you're going to put in more time, okay? That's a given, right? If you don't want to be doing that during tax season, don't be in an accounting firm. I mean, that's just a given. Not that you can't say that I'm requesting, okay, if you remember from the last class how we had accept, request, decline, counter, I'm requesting that I have more support. I'm not willing to take home 5 hours worth of work, and I'm willing to do 3, 1, whatever. I'm not willing to do any, whatever it is, okay, and this isn't going to get done. All right, you're fired, but I'm being hypothetical, but you want to have a conversation that's moving the action forward, not one that's keeping you stuck in the complaint and making the company wrong. That doesn't do anything for anybody. And if we keep having these complaints, what happens is we're getting a payoff. Okay? And ultimately, all of these payoffs result in us not having to be responsible. Okay? We are 100% responsible for our own lives, for our own happiness, for our well-being. Okay? And if we're looking out there for them to do it for us, you're always going to be let down. All right?
And look, no one's perfect, okay? Everyone, every once in a while, we need to just bitch. Let's just be honest. You have a little complaint and you feel better. And so, but tell somebody that. Say to somebody, hey, I need to dump for a second. Have your complaint and move forward and feel better because you feel a little bit lighter. Although you didn't solve the problem, you feel a lot lighter if you solve the problem. So, so I just kind of say.
And if you're the person receiving that, say, I totally get it, and what are you going to do about it?
Right. Because what and I know Francesca doesn't like the word try either, but what I try to do is I won't complain about something unless I intend to solve it or try to solve it. So for me, I'll think to myself, oh, do I really want to just go complain for a minute? Because that means I'm going to hold myself accountable to go then try to solve it. So again, it's probably a little idealistic. I can tell you I try to do it. I do have my times when I dump. There's no question. But it is, you will walk around a lot less lighter when you don't have the chronic complaints.
Yeah, I mean, because it literally impacts you. And also, just know, remember, I don't know if you guys remember from last year when we did the exercise with frameworks and I showed you, can you find the mistake? And I had 10 numbers. Does anybody remember that one, besides Mark? Well, I wish I had it with me now. It said, can you find the mistake? And then it had 10 numbers. And our automatic framework is to look at the 10 numbers for the mistake, okay? So it takes a different awareness or a different perspective to actually see, can you find the mistake, okay? So even, this is why I say be careful of descriptive words and be careful of what you're saying because your words are very, very powerful. If you're complaining to your partner, to the people you work with, and everybody's complaining there's too much work, you're gonna start looking through a lens and actually everything is going to validate that there's too much work because that's what you're looking for, all right? So you just want to be careful on that because what are you creating? Your language creates your reality here, all right? So if everybody starts being responsible and communicating from win and on the court language, action-based language with the intended outcome, can you imagine the results you get? There'd be a lot less time spent on the caca. And who really needs it? I mean, every once in a while, yeah, it's good to get together with your girlfriends and do whatever. But in terms of being effective, it doesn't work. So are there any more questions on that? Is that clear for people? Look, and I encourage you to look at what the payoff is, okay? Because we all do get payoffs. I mean, I love being right. And I remember years ago, when I had become this, it was a self-expression and leadership leader for this organization. And I remember saying to my husband when I came home, I said to him, well, now that I'm a self-expression leadership leader, I get to be right all the time. And he said to me, you're not a self-expression and leadership leader. He said, you're a make-wrong machine disguised as a self-expression and leadership leader. So just know that we all love to be right, okay? Or we all love to get our payoffs. And really, it's much easier to say, I'm not willing to spend 5 hours a night doing the work that I'm given, or I didn't get all the work done and I need to have a solution here, okay? You enroll people and people want to work with you. So we're going to do another little exercise here. What I want people to look at is, actually take 1 minute and share your chronic complaint. And if everybody had the same one, that'd be a hoot. But share it with a partner. Pick a partner and share your complaint. Okay, so let's just take a look at your chronic complaint.
Just that I have the saying, I'm wasting saliva.
You're wasting saliva?
Yeah, that I'm repeating the same story over and over.
Oh,
No
okay.
one's listening to me, that I'm not being valued or respected.
Okay, so your complaint is that you're not valued or respected.
Listened to, basically.
Okay, so when you're feeling that way, okay, what are the thoughts that you have? And what does it leave you as an...
I'm wasting my time. I'm not important. I'm not valued. Angry.
Angry emotions, okay. Any other thoughts?
Just, why do I waste my time? That's my big one.
Okay. Okay, good. So you can see this is kind of a framework where she's not listened to, is the framework that she's listening to people from, all right? And what that leaves her with is that she's not valued, the thoughts come up, and then I'm wasting my time and I'm angry. So do you want this to shift?
Yes.
Okay, so what's a different framework or perspective that you could look at this from?
Try to, another way to say it, but I feel like you're nagging all the time or repeating the same story. I'm not sure.
What would be a different framework to hold it in? Okay, instead of I'm not being listened to.
Why aren't they listening to me, or what? How am I communicating it?
Again, let's take a look here. How might the situation occur for me so that I would feel valued or empowered? What would be a way you could hold that instead of holding it that I'm not being listened to, that would empower you instead of disempower you?
Go about saying it a different way or a different method? Is that what you mean?
Okay, well, how about people, taking from what you said, people hear things differently.
Okay.
Would that work? Or people need different explanations? Or anything else you can think of? Does that empower you?
Yes, yes, I guess I'm not taking it internally. It's more, yeah.
Okay, so if you were to look at it that people hear things differently instead of they're not listening to me, okay, then what would that leave you as far as thoughts?
Think of things in their shoes or in their way, or,
Okay, so you're looking to see how they might think. What else? Do you feel valued now?
Valued is the word, but I'm giving them a reason why they're not, I think they're listening to me, or they might have other problems or something, and what I'm saying is not
Might have
important.
problems. Anything else? How about emotionally? What kind of experience do you have? Are you angry?
Maybe not take it so personally then.
Oh, if you're not taking it personally, you feel what?
I'm not going to listen. That's it. I can't change them. I can't change the world.
I can't change them. And you don't feel upset, right?
Right.
You feel calm, peaceful?
Yeah, just that's the way it is.
Okay, the way it is. Okay, so, and again, you can change this to anything, but you want to look at in your chronic complaint or anything that's upsetting you, first of all, you want to identify it as a framework that you're holding it in, and that's why I said with the words too much, okay? You want to look at how you're languaging it, you want to look at the interpretation or the conclusions you're adding, and if you switch the framework, okay, then it switches how your thoughts are, and it switches what your experience is, okay? So we always want to look for something that's going to make us feel valued or empower us. Are the conversations you are having productive, or are they complaints? And we want to, again, create the empowering framework. So even in too much work, I loved, like in the beginning when people were sharing, and I think it was Patrice, you said, I passed, okay? That's an empowering framework, okay? Versus, okay, they're trying to screw me or they're really messing with me, okay? That's one that would disempower you. And when you're feeling that way, then you're excited to go to work and you're excited to do what you want. So it's just a matter of shifting how you're holding it. I said this earlier, that we relate to our frameworks as if they're reality. And it's a reality illusion, okay? And we look to get agreement and we look to validate what we're thinking. So I just want you to try it on. I know this is new stuff, and I'm so grateful for Kelly for having been with me for so many years, because she's used it and is able to validate it. So what I want to talk about now is the impact of frameworks on listening. Okay? We also have frameworks around how we hear things. Okay? And even in what we just did in this example, when people, there was something this woman said about how she was listened to, okay? She's listening to through a framework of how people are listening to her. So what happens is it constrains what registers for you, it shapes and it distorts it, and we're unaware of the distortion. So say, for example, you hate Republican politicians. You don't trust them. And there's a Republican politician, say, that is promoting the health care plan that you want. And how you would listen to that is, well, they're only doing that because they want to get elected in the next election. That would be a listening that you have for what that person is saying. So we have many, many, many different types of listenings, and we're not even aware that we have these filters that we're listening through. We have them about ourselves, we have them about others. So I'm going to give you a few of the different types of listenings that I say that we have. The first one is agenda listening, okay? We're only talking to this person because we really want to tell them our agenda. We have no interest in really what they're saying. We're thinking about when's the opportunity for me to speak up. Pretend listening. You're putting on a face like, oh yeah, but you're thinking of something else. Fix-it listening, okay? Have you ever been with somebody that, me as a mother, whenever I listen to my kids, that's what I hear. I have to fix their problems, okay? That's what this person's listening to. What can I tell them in order to make it better? Know-it-all listening. And I'm going to read you something on know-it-all listening. Okay, if you have know-it-all listening, if when you are driving and you know to turn right at the next corner, and your passenger says to you, turn right at the next corner, you are likely to defensively blurt out, I know, even though letting the passenger know that you know is irrelevant to anything other than defending your listening that I know. The entire need to say I know comes from I know being in your listening. It's not that you're thinking I know, it's that who you are is I know. And when someone says something that occurs for you as a challenge to who you are, you respond defensively. Ever been with someone like that? Okay, there's know-it-all listening, there's defensive listening, okay? Defensive listening is when somebody says, it's not my fault, I'm not to blame, I didn't do it, okay? They come up with excuses. All right, so as adults, we know that it is possible for it not to be, for it to be our fault, or we could be to blame. And we're not actively thinking it's not our fault or we're not to blame, but when you're in this listening, who you are is, it's not my fault. You're hearing everything through, it's not my fault. Okay, so when something goes wrong in any discussion, or they're looking for accountability or responsibility, the filter of it's not my fault comes in, and out comes the excuses, rationalizations about what happened. Okay, so then there's, righteous listening, all right? I'm always right. I'm right, you're wrong. It's always about making a point of how, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be argumentative and tell you how my point of view is. Then, do I agree or disagree when somebody's talking? It's all about that. And then finally, there's present or active listening. And this is the only time that real listening or real communication happens. Because with all of the other listenings that I stated previously, you are now distorting what is being heard. Okay, you're not present. So what is present or active listening? It's if I'm with Kelly, okay, I put all of that aside. I'm completely being with her and getting how it is occurring for her in her world, whether there's validity, whether I agree, whether she's right, whether she's wrong. I'm just right there with her, getting how it is in her world. Because this is the only time that you can actually communicate something or learn something, all right? We already know what we know, all right? So it doesn't matter if we're right, if we're wrong. It's not going to give us any other input. If you're being a leader, you want to know what's going on with your people, because that's the only way you can shift something. So what I'd like you to do, we're going to do another little exercise, is to partner up, and you can even use your chronic complaint again, and share with your partner. And you're both going to get a chance to share. The first person that's going to share, just be present to whether you feel you're being listened to. Okay, whether the person is actively or presently listening or not. And how you know that is you'll feel gotten, all right? When somebody is gotten, what they said disappears. If somebody really gets you, it's no longer there. The second person who is doing the listening, you just want to notice too, am I, going to trying to fix it? Am I, going to thinking I'm right? Or am I going to, I know that? Or what are they talking about? Or am I judging? Where am I going, okay? And then we're going to switch, and then we'll share a little bit. So, Kelly?
I'm a big fix-it listener, and I know that. And so I do it with my mentees. When I'm having mentor lunches, I'm thinking in my head, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. I'm like big, and so I'm aware of it, and so I have to really work hard to just be present and active, but in the back of my mind, I'm still taking notes on what I think the solutions are. But I'm just aware. You have to be aware of who you are, right? So what kind of listener you are, and if you're aware of it, then you can just try to listen differently.
Yeah, really, really good point, because I'm not sure if it's on the next slide or not, but one of the things, I think it is on the next slide, but one of the things in terms of listening is we can't change anything unless we do have an awareness of it, okay? Otherwise, it's in that 85% of the unconsciousness. So the thing to do is, if you notice you have a fix-it listening, then what you want to do then is acknowledge it. So I think, Audria, when you were talking earlier and you said the thing on HR, I went away for a minute because immediately my mind went to, oh, I can use that example and framework, okay? So the key is to notice you do that and then acknowledge it, because in the process of doing it, and that's why I said to you, could you please repeat that? Okay, acknowledge it. I went away for a second. You're building a muscle. You're actually training yourself to be present, okay? If you don't have awareness, if you don't take the action to bring yourself back, you're just going to resort to the same old way you were talking. Nobody had any ahas or anything as far as how they listen besides Kelly? Okay, you guys aren't the biggest sharers. Okay, so I must be scary or something. So, okay, so any questions so far on listening? All right, you want to listen to understand. Be present, turn off your distractions. I mean, you know how in today's world everybody has their cell phone, and make sure your thinking is aligned with your intended outcome. You want to separate out. Notice if you're judging, evaluating, opinions or assumptions are coming up, okay? Because as soon as you're doing that, you're into a filtered listening. I always, like to repeat back what people have said or what I think they've said so that I know that I'm actually hearing what they say. Distinguish out when you're not in present listening and acknowledge it. That's what we just talked about. So questions on that? Okay. Moving the action forward. All right, you always want to look at what your commitment or your intended outcome is. Remember in that formula I gave you, fact plus intended outcome. Then look at what actually did happen. What is missing? And what's the next action necessary to create the result? All right? I'm not willing to come home and do 5 hours of work at night. Okay? So what's missing? And what's the next action? I need to have a conversation with my superior to let him know this and see what our opportunities are. Instead of looking backward to what went wrong, look forward to what the outcome is you want. The past will keep you stuck there. Okay, if we're looking backwards to what went wrong all the time, we're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to go round and round in the same story again and again. You want to speak from opportunity, not from unworkability, not from resistance, not from being right, okay? We always want to look for partnership, we, us, okay? Enroll people in what you want. People, the most important thing to people is everybody wants to feel that they make a difference, okay? So if you approach somebody from the perspective of that you can actually help or support me, of course I'm going to be enrolled in that. Whereas if you come off and say, oh, you shouldn't blah, 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 and make me wrong, well, then I just want to back up. That's going to stop my communication. The 3 pillars of effective communication. The first one is present listening. If we don't have that, then we don't even really know what we're talking about. We're not getting what's really going on. What are the facts? Stick to the facts. Be complete. If you do these things, your communication is going to improve dramatically. Questions? Does anybody have any questions on what was discussed today? Yeah, I would encourage you to just take one thing from today, whether it's a chronic complaint, an unsaid, a resentment, and just communicate it. Try it. See what happens. I promise you, great results. Thank you.